Next, we'll be joined by Kelly Smart. Kelly is the Centre Coordinator at Lakes Entrance Aquadome and Orbost Outdoor Pool for East Gippsland Shire Council. Due to the facilities being closed, she is currently working as a Pandemic Projects Coordinator. Kelly has worked in the aquatics industry for 8 years and reflects on the year that was, saying that 2020 has been one of the hardest, but it has also shown me the strength and resilience small communities have.
Hi, I wanted to start off by saying that the story in my presentation is mine and some of my team's. There are thousands of stories out there, but there isn't a single person that hasn't been impacted or knows someone that's been impacted by the recent bushfires that tore through our beautiful town. But this is our story from an aquatic facility point of view. I wanted to start off by showing these photos. These are part of my team. This is Christmas, a few days before the major event, and we love Christmas, especially at the Aquadome. We go all out, big decorations and everything. I worked as the Centre Coordinator for Lakes Entrance Aquadome and for Orbost Outdoor Pool, but I'm currently the Pandemic Coordinator for East Gippsland. And my story starts on my birthday, December 29th, where my family and I were out for lunch and we spent time, having a drink, everything like that. And while we were there, we got a text message. The text message came from the state government. I'd never received a text message from the state government before. It was telling us that we needed to enact our fire plans. Didn't really think much more of it and finished my beer and went home. I went to work at 5:30 the next day. I remember the air was different. It was hot, unusually hot for 5:30 in the morning. But we opened and we went along as business as usual. During the morning, a staff member came in and said to me, "Cal, it's bad. It looks really bad out there." And we looked outside and you could see the wind, like it was strong, it was hard, it was fast, and there was black leaves all over the ground. They were just falling everywhere. At 2 p.m, the CFA came to our door and asked us for a list of all the chemicals that we had on site. They wanted to know what we had in case the fire was coming our way. We gave them the list, and at this point I realised that something's not right. It's getting worse. At 3 p.m, we got a phone call from the Orbost Outdoor Pool, who had the CFA on site there as well, and they wanted to connect their pumps up to be able to pump the water out. The CFA explained to me that they didn't have enough water in the town of Orbost to be able to fight the fire if it came that close. So they set up the fire pumps ready to take the water out. Our staff that were on site at the time had to then shut down the main plant, ensuring that the dosing stopped and all the mechanics were turned off in preparation. Our staff had never done that before. So we video called them and walked them through what they needed to do. At the time, video calling was very different, but as we all know now, it's the norm. Our staff were great and they were able to do what needed. It was also at this time that I rang my manager. I needed assistance. I needed to know what to do. The decision was made to close the facilities and for us to go home and prepare ourselves. I went home and I enacted our fire plan for my family. At 5 p.m. that day, I received a phone call from our control centre in Bairnsdale asking if I would go back to the Aquadome and prepare a new relief centre as there was too many people still in town. The decision was made to open up the basketball stadium in town, which, if you've ever been to Lakes Entrance, it's one court. It's not really a stadium as such. We then were told that there was too many people left in town and the messages were coming through saying the roads were closed, you can't get out. We were then also told that we had no bedding. So I called the team, asked them to come back to the Aquadome to help me, and we got whatever we could find for bedding. We got yoga mats, we got learn to swim mats that the kids float on. And we even went into our children's services area and grabbed the cot just in case we had young kids. 3 carloads later, we had enough bedding for 100 people just on the things that we found within the facility. We opened the relief centre and we assisted all throughout the night. Meanwhile, I was arranging for my family to come closer into town so that I knew that they were safe so I could care for other people in the community. This first photo is of around 10 p.m. We thought we were tired at this stage, but tired had not even hit us at this point. We spent the night looking after people of all walks of life. We had people who had no idea what was going on, and we had other people who wanted to know everything that was happening. We had asthma attacks, we had panic attacks, we had dehydration, we had scared kids, and we had elderly with limited mobility. We also had dogs, lots and lots of dogs, which really helped with the scared kids. This red photo was actually taken from my backyard. At 3 a.m, I finally took a break and I sat out the front of the basketball stadium. Ash was falling all around, burnt leaves all over the ground. I was scared. I cried, but I drank the coldest can of Coke that I could find, thinking that this caffeine will be enough to get me through the night. About 5 minutes later, a cool breeze came from behind me. And I remember this moment so much that I remembered that it was a sigh of relief. That when that cold wind came, it was cold and it came from the opposite direction. And I knew at that point that this was the cold change we'd been waiting for. This was going to help the firefighters stop the fire from coming to Lakes Entrance. It was going to help. The biggest sigh of relief came over me. I worked through until 8 a.m. the next day. This beautiful photo of me just shows how tired and exhausted I was. But at the time, all I could think was about the firefighters, the emergency services, and our control centre and how they kept on going. But I was exhausted. I went home and I only slept for about 6 hours. After this, I went down with my family to bring in the new year with the rest of the town. The next day, 1st of January, I went back to the relief centres and offered assistance to help wherever I could. I stayed until about the 16th of January, where I helped manage the bushfire relief centres that we had and the information centres that we needed, as well as trying to reopen the recreation facilities when safe to do so. Over the next few days, we had to evacuate the town again. This time there was not many people left. Once the roads opened, people left. My team stayed. They stayed for the people who were left in town to ensure that they were supported and cared for during this time of need. Over the weeks in this role, I met some of the strongest community people that I've ever met. People who had lost everything but still wanted to help. They wanted to help those who they felt needed more help, whether it be giving them advice, having a cuppa with them, or genuinely just handing over the clothes on their back. I made some great friends with the Defence Force and was lucky enough to work with them. It was a weird feeling every time they rolled up in their big vehicles or the chooks went flying overhead. The emotional roller coaster that we went through is one that I won't forget. A sense of pride when you saw the CFA and emergency services. A sense of sadness when you spoke with community members. And a sense of hope when you worked with colleagues to assist the community in the way that we did. But what did we learn? We learned in the first few days that the outdoor pool was capable of assisting the CFA by giving them extra water if they required it. We learned that recreation facility equipment can be used in many different ways. It can be changed to be whatever is required, so a learn to swim mat became bedding for someone on a basketball floor stadium. Training of staff is extremely important, and the training that the aquatic industry brings was able to be adapted into what we needed at the time. The staff, mainly lifeguards and customer service, worked in the relief centres to help with anything that came up. Asthma attacks, panic attacks, dehydration, scared people, people that were low mobility, they were able to assist with. General communication was an utmost of importance so that people could understand that we're going through a scary stage at the moment, but it'll be okay. After the first major evacuation, a lot of staff were redeployed. We realised at this point how interchangeable our staff skill was. From lifeguards and customer service working at relief centres through to duty managers and team leaders working to respond to claims to help people rebuild their lives, to coordinators and managers working out of the control centre and aerodromes for the relief effort. We also learnt that relationships with our remote staff is highly important. The Orbost outdoor pool is 45 minutes away by car from Lakes Entrance, and the staff that work there are summer staff. And at this point of the major event, these staff had only been working for us about 6 weeks, and one of these weeks was the induction week. We weren't able to drive to Orbost due to the fact the roads were closed, so we weren't able to physically get there to assist people. But by having a good communication plan and knowing that we could communicate to our staff via other means meant that the staff felt supported to get through what they needed to do in this time. Community values. I moved to Lakes Entrance 8 years ago with my family, and I thought I knew what community meant. It wasn't until this event that I realised what community meant and also what the role of our facilities play in the community, as they are community facilities. Every New Year's, Lakes Entrance hosts the best New Year's Eve party that I've ever seen. There's carnivals, there's food, there's markets, there's fireworks, there's bands playing. It's a massive, massive event. They shut down the main street. And if you've been to Lakes Entrance, there's really only one main street. But this New Year's was different, but it meant more. The community banded together out the front of one of the local businesses where the local musicians grabbed their gear and played music all night long. The local fish and chip shops stayed open for a community picnic where people could get chips and sit on the grass, listen to some music and come together as a community. While this event was happening, the firefighters returned. As they were returning, the whole community stood up and started clapping and cheering. The amount of emotion that goes over me is huge. The community spirit of knowing that these firefighters had been out saving our neighbouring towns from the fires, had just returned home, was the most proudest moment that I remember as a community member. I saw this again over the next few weeks where community people just banded together to either give advice, to have a cuppa, to make you stop for 5 minutes and say hello, or help you find as many gas bottles in town in 20 minutes, get it on a boat, get it to Malakuta. But I tell you what, that one's a different story. Community and recreation facilities is not any different to out in the community. When we were able to reopen and people could return to our facilities, our customer service team had to use their skills to the extreme. We had members returning that had lost everything, and all they wanted to do was see a familiar face and go for a swim or go for their gym workout. And all I can say is there was a lot of cups of coffee during this time, and our staff were amazing to just be there to listen to what these people needed. Returning. How we did it was definitely different. It was not something that I had actually been trained to do. It had to be different. Our first point of call was to check in with all the staff. Even if they only worked 1 hour a week for us, or if they worked full time, they got a check-in phone call. We had a standard check-in, but we soon realised it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to just ring up and say, "Hi, how are you? You're doing good, that's great." It had to be more. We had staff who'd lost all their property. We had staff who'd been hospitalised due to smoke inhalation, and we had staff who hadn't even returned to the area from evacuating to see what awaited them on their return. We realised as much as the community needed us, we weren't ready to open. We had to ensure that our staff had the support in place for when we reopened. We needed to also ensure that if we had a major incident at the facility, that our staff would be able to handle it emotionally and mentally, not just another thing that would be on top of what we've just dealt with. Our organisation had plans in place to support this, but a call to LSV was also greatly needed to ensure that we had the support to give to our staff that required it. Bairnsdale and Lakes Entrance opened first. When Lakes Entrance reopened to the public, we didn't really realise how much the smoke was going to affect us. We weren't able to open to full capacity. We couldn't put every program back on just based on the amount of smoke that was still around. The Bairnsdale outdoor pool remained closed for a bit longer due to air quality and visibility. The Orbost outdoor pool required a different approach to reopen. The ash and the debris had made the facility a horrible looking place. We also needed to ensure that the water quality met the health standards. We didn't end up reopening that pool until the end of January, and we only opened it for a few hours a day rather than our normal peak season that we would do. We went back to normal operation in about mid-February. So my take-home message is this: training of staff. It's highly important, not just for their job role, but for what else might be thrown at them. Know your facility, know what's in there and what can be changed into something different in these sort of situations. Understanding that everyone reacts and deals with highly emotional situations differently, taking time for yourself, and genuine time for others. A 10-minute chat could change someone's day. And lastly, being real. It's probably one of the most important things that I learnt, is to show the real you, the authentic you. Then you'll connect in ways that you never thought that you needed or what others required. Thank you.